Hey y'all, it's Connor from Bigfoot Anonymous. I'm here at the oldest graveyard in town visiting my friend's family. But I'm here to read my Letters from Family and Friends chapter of Monsters and Mysteries Around the Corner. First one's from Bonnie. I live in a semi-haunted house, which has its fair share of hauntings. My parents told me when I was little, I would tell them I see angels, whether it was in church, school, or on the street. I remember them vividly, but I also remember when I stopped seeing angels and started to see darker figures. Around the time my grandpa, died in 4th grade. When we were at his funeral, I remember all of the angels I was looking at rising up into the church's ceiling, and I remember a dark feeling coming over me. I wasn't sure if it was because my grandfather passed or because of what I was about to experience. I remember feeling frantic and wanting to tell someone, but when it came to what I would see, I tried to keep it to myself. Since it would literally scare the shit out of my parents, when it would one point even got blessed by a priest and my very religious grandma. At the end of 4th and 5th grade, I started becoming an angry atheist. I would curse at God for my odd child reasons and would remember being very angry at God. I became depressed, fearful of everything, and had many more encounters with these dark figures. Most of these encounters would happen before I tried to fall asleep. I would wake up with gashes in my stomach that looked like a cat cutting me. I have mementos of waking up the opposite of my room from what felt like a panic attack. Started to believe that I slept and walked, but that wasn't the case. I remember one night feeling like I was being choked in my bed and trying to scream but couldn't. I felt my room feeling pitch black, though my bright SpongeBob light lit up the whole room. I remember the second I felt I could breathe again, running to my parents' room, screaming and crying, hoping that they would once again watch over me as I tried to fall asleep. They were at a point fed up at how many times I've told them about these figures and what I felt they were. They told me to say Hail Mary over and over until I fall asleep. I remember pounding on their door, screaming bloody murder, and I thought it would be best not to answer a door and let me cope with my own ghosts and demons. I remember feeling how dark my room was and how I felt these figures around me as I prayed. I was shaking to the point I could have passed out from shock. In the corner from my old room, in the crayon, there was a writing of me praying to God, saying I'd become a believer if He spared me and my family from these hauntings. I'm not sure exactly what it says exactly, since the crayon is a bright color, and I wrote it when I was laying down, so it's very messy, but it's still there to this day. I remember staying up, saying the Hail Mary till I finally knocked out. That was the last day I saw those figures, felt those figures, and heard those figures till around my freshman year of college. I have memories of how they used to call for me to come downstairs or open the door. They had high-pitched voices, almost sounding like children. I remember them always calling my name, hiding myself under as many blankets as possible. I used to think if they couldn't see me, they wouldn't bother me. That was never the case, because they definitely continued to haunt me until the night my parents made me do the Hail Mary. I have memories of a blanket trying to be pulled off of me, and memories of my dad going downstairs to turn off the TV that would turn on in the middle of the night, flicker uncontrollably through different channels, which he'd say was my papa, because at my Nana's grandma's house, the same would always happen. After the night of the Hail Marys, I eventually became a believer of God, but unfortunately ended up becoming so afraid of it happening again that I eventually became paranoid of everything, especially the nighttime. I have many more stories and details I didn't want to add, but I tried to tie all of it into briefly biggest night I've encountered. I sometimes like to picture ghosts and demons, angels, because from what I've encountered, I've met some nice ones and some pretty shitty ones too. Hope that helps. Pow. I was at the beach with my friends. We were just having a toke, some drinks. A friend of mine, let's call her Joy, got pretty drunk. She was all over the place, like emotionally, laughing, crying. She'd been my roommate ever since, so there's this little fact that I know about her. She's afraid of the dark. Where we were at was full of trees, and then the beach. Not many people, no lights, nothing. There were a few cubos, huts, and the rest were just a few tents. Joy told us that she wanted to pee. The bathroom was in the middle of the dark, surrounded by tall trees. I'm like, no, boo, that's too far. and too dark. Just pee by the shore. Besides, she was hella drunk and couldn't walk straight. She was adamant about peeing there, so I just went with her. Eventually, she couldn't get to it, so she just peed beside a kubo. I helped her with her bottoms, and after all that hassle, she just sits down and tells me that the trees are beautiful. And yes, I do agree that the trees are beautiful. And she started crying again and pouring out her feelings, so I was just there for her. Friends by the beach went to us. She was just staring at the trees, and we were wondering what she was staring at, looking around, kind of being cautious, yet amused. Then her eyes just stared into the abyss, eye level. She looked at one of us and said, "Sino Ka," which means, "Who are you?" with a dead voice. That was the first time, man. I've seen her drunk on many occasions, but she never brought that vibe. Then she told us, "Wake up, Maddie." And okay, we woke him up. Didn't know why, but what we did, it was odd because they weren't that close. And Maddie wakes up, he tells me, "This better be good. I'm getting my beauty rest." He looks over to Joy and says, "Oh gosh, this can't be happening." It's like he knew what was happening. Okay, that's when we all found out that he had a third eye, or like this gift to see and feel other entities. Joy never knew that. Maddie talks to Joy about it and tells whatever entity that semi-possessed her to go away in a friendly manner. We were around 5 to 6 people in a circle and started praying because we were kind of scared. So eventually Joy was fine and just slept it off. So Maddie explained to us that someone wanted to lure her into the woods. We couldn't sleep that night. We were so scared, like when we woke up, she'd be gone. The next day she woke up and we were like, "Yo, do you remember anything from last night?" Joy, "Why are y'all looking at me?" So apparently there were some things she couldn't remember, and her memory of last night was too blurry. And she said that it wasn't even from the alcohol. Wow. This one's from Tyler. Basically, my best friend in elementary school had a mom that was a witch, and once she messed up on whatever ceremony she was doing that night, and I was at her house that night. I woke up to get water, and when I was near her room, I had a black aura that felt like something was taking over me. She woke up as soon as it happened and started chanting something, and then got me water and put me back to bed. This one's from Holly. My dog food bowl was downstairs in the kitchen, and now my ex was upstairs. He heard something walk down. My dog's food bowl was upside down and moving around the floor. Upstairs, when I'd sleep alone, all my movies would fall onto the floor. If I'd pick them up, they'd be in a different spot each morning. Some of my stuff would go missing and would be in an off-the-wall place. Doors slammed shut. This one's from Johnny. When my great-grandmother passed away, we were all in the room with her when she died. My father, my uncle, and my grandpa were all wearing watches, and there was a clock on the wall. A few minutes after she passed, we realized the clock in the wall had stopped at the time she died, and all their watches had stopped at nearly the same time. I just always looked at it as something that shows the energy that's inside us and what it might mean to die. In the months after passing, my mom was at home in her room, and the radio turned on all by itself. It was a song that she knew to be one of her grandmother's favorite songs. She turned the radio off and it turned right back on, and she kept it on and let the rest of the song play. My Aunt Kathy. We stayed at the Conneaut Hotel, what was supposedly haunted. Big fire there, bride died there on her wedding night. What was left of the ballroom, still there in ruins when we were there. Had a pretty creepy pic of Sarah in the room we stayed at on the lake, shaped like an octagon. Kinda ghost-like. She looked like she was floating. I'd have to find it. I believe it had something to do with the developing in the film. Long story. We almost had the hotel to ourselves. Walked through the whole thing. Went into just about any room we wanted. Maintenance took us on a so-called haunted room. It was kinda crazy. My babysitter. My dude Brandon has a haunted house. He grew up a couple houses down from your place in Boston. He had doors slammed and other weird shit. One of the previous owners hung himself in their garage. My dude Juan. My name is Juan, and one night I was out feeding the animals, and I just managed to look up, and I seen this reddish orange line dot at the end, and the dot wasn't flickering or anything. It was moving up the line was disappearing, and it was going behind it. Then once it hit the end of the line, it vanished. I freaked out because I'd never seen anything like that in my life. Tony and Adriana. Driving on the road past the swamps, Tony came closer to a row of trees with a warning sign that had a large crow was resting on. Thinking nothing much of the sight until halfway past the swamp, another warning sign appeared for gas pumps, buried beneath the soil with a similar crow perched on the top of the sign. Tony thought it was weird to see two crows nearby, but that was all. Finally reaching the edge of the swamp, a third crow was standing on a different warning sign, spread its wings, and took flight towards the trees. It did a twisted turn with one wing clutched to its stomach, then the other spread out. It disappeared into the spaced out trees, leaving 3 feathers floating to the ground. For some weeks during the night, Adriana would hear a tune. The tune was loud and solemn. Playing at a slow speed, it was creepy and somewhat comforting at the same time. During the day, she would try to find out the name of the tune on the internet, but couldn't find everything. Every night for about a week, she would hear the tune as she was falling asleep. One day, she was spending time with her brother's room. She unconsciously hummed the tune to herself when he asked what she was humming. She replied that she didn't know. It was just a tune that she heard in the night. Her brother then told her seriously he recognized that tune. Asking what it was, he replied it was a funeral tune that was played during World War II. Not believing him, she denied what he said until he showed her a clip on YouTube and played the same tune that she had been hearing. Shocked that she had been hearing music for the dead at night. Then she went to bed fearfully that night, only to never hear the tune again. That's a good one. Brian. I had one of my best encounters last night. Was sitting around the fire by myself, looked up and saw Eyeshine, about 7'5" feet tall. And I waved at it to test it out. Then it went smoothly from 7'5" to 2 feet. And that's it for these ones. But I have a Letters from Family chapter in every book that I write. So be ready for the next one. Can't wait to record it. Later, y'all.